This is Nan McKay, and I would like to introduce you today to Kathy Crosslin, known as Kat. She is the founder and CEO of Instar Performance. So welcome, Kat Crosslin.
Thank you, Nan. It is so great to be here.
Now, Kat, you worked for someone else for 15 years. And then you started your own firm. So where did you start and how did you arrive at this spot in your career?
You know, it's interesting to think about my journey here because I feel like I've been doing what I do now for my entire life. I was, as you know, college basketball coach for a number of years. And during that time, I was also working for Gordon Graham at Gordon Graham and Company. And that organization got me started doing this type of work. So Gordon dedicated himself to developing people, creating leadership development work, working in the criminal justice system, working in union management programs. And his whole lifestyle was built around what we still teach today. So when I started my own business, really what I was doing was taking over his. In 2009, I believe it was, 2008, 2009, Gordon felt like I was ready to go on my own and he was getting to a point where he was ready to retire. And so I took over the company and took it into a new branding and a bit more leadership focused than I think he had been totally. And so that's how I ended up where I am. 2009 was not a great year to start a business on my own. And many people thought that it wasn't going to work out. I'm proud to say that we were debt-free within a couple of years and we're doing some pretty incredible work around the world.
That's fantastic. And especially when you're talking global. So what led you to being called a maker of champions?
I love the term. It started because years ago when I was a young professional working with Gordon, I started to ask myself, what kind of impact do I want to have on people? And as you know, we teach affirmations as part of our mindset work, how to create the mindset to have the most effective and full, vivacious life we possibly can. So one of my affirmations early on was centered around the impact I want to have on people. And I said, I am a maker of champions. When I come around, things get better. It sounds like an arrogant statement. And so if you don't understand affirmations, you would say, wow, that's a bit egotistical. When it's an affirmation, it's not. What I was trying to do was be sure that I always triggered in my mind the idea that I want to behave in such a way that if I come into a situation, I'm going to leave it a bit better than when I came. That if I am working with an individual, whether that's an athlete or a leader or an inmate in prison, I want to make sure that I'm turning that person into, or giving them the tools to turn into the best possible version of themselves that they can. So that's where it came from. I shared that affirmation with one of my clients, one of my executives who I've coached for a number of years, and he loved it. And he thought that's exactly what he felt I was doing. And his trajectory based on our work has been excellent. And so he kind of coined it for me. So that's where I'm at with that. And I'm hoping that I always affirm it so that I always move in that direction.
You know, what's really good about that is it's a focus. It's a way to focus. And I have a feeling that focusing is fairly important.
You're right, Nan. Focus is critical. In fact, the human brain is teleological. This is something we teach when we're talking about your mindset and how to create the mindset for an effective and exciting life. You're teleological, and that means you're picture seeking. And really, it means you are focusing. We tend to think that we are focusing consciously, and it's important to understand that you are focusing on the clearest picture you have, whether that picture is good for you or not. So the clearest, a quote I'm saying all the time, the clearest picture always wins. And that might be a clear picture of what you are most afraid of or most insecure about. Or it could be a clear picture of your home on the beach in Maui, where I am right now, that you hear the waves crashing and you have this clear picture of the dreams that you have in life. So focus is everything. We help you make sure you're focusing on what you really want instead of what you don't want.
That's good advice. You've worked globally. How has the pandemic affected that work?
That is a great question. At first, it made the work non-existent. So for the first time in probably 7 years-ish, for the first time, I have flown less than 300,000 miles. I was flying 300,000 miles a year. And this year I haven't at all. And that's because we do our work in person. We do facilitation and coaching and a lot of on-site activity. So it was non-existent. So what I did was in March, right after we shut down in Washington State, my team and I said, well, what can we do that would help? You know, we're not doctors. We don't build PPE equipment. And so we decided that some workshops with what we teach could really help people through difficult times. We also saw a side benefit, and that side benefit was to demonstrate to people that Zoom could be a very powerful, or web conferencing, any platform, can be a very powerful way to work with people across time zones, across the globe. So I developed 3 or 4 different series that were essentially free for people to attend. And we had a sliding scale on a couple of them from 0 to not very much. And we spent a lot of time developing those. And what happened is we were able to demonstrate to people who attended that this could really be an effective way to do the work. And so my largest client, it is a global auto manufacturing client, they said, do you think you could do some of these activities we had planned over the web? And I said, absolutely, let's do it. So we've been doing some things with leaders in India and China and Europe, and they've gone quite well. And that really picked up. In fact, November and December, I was swamped. We're really proud of that work. I would still take in-person work over conferencing. I think it's like text messaging. Text messaging is an excellent addition to your communication. It doesn't replace it very well. And I think video conferencing is the same way. It's an excellent addition. It's an excellent second best. In-person still carries so many opportunities for connection that in our work is really important, and shared experience.
What do you do with language? Do you just teach in English and everybody pretty well knows English, or how does that work?
That is, when I first started doing this, one of my goals was to work around the globe. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to, because I'm not multilingual. I have a little bit of French and a little bit of Spanish, and I get mixed up on where to use them. But what I learned in the process is that English is the language of business. So where I'm facilitating, I am often the person in the room who is speaking English. Everyone else also speaks English, but then their group workshops, when they do small groups at their tables, they're often speaking in their native language. Occasionally, I have people with me who can translate both. I have a number of people who I've contracted as facilitators in various countries who help with that process. And it's awesome. I mean, I've learned so much by facilitating in different countries. I've learned how to speak in terms that aren't so laden with the idioms that we have in the US that we don't think about. I've learned so much about how the world sees the US. I've learned so much about what effective leadership really looks like because of the discussions that we have in other countries. It's been the biggest blessing of my life. I've loved every moment of it.
You know what I'd really like to know is, do you incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion in your business training and coaching? Because that's one of my passions. And I want to know, do you? And then how? What do you do?
The answer is yes. I will say that this year, this past year in 2020, we've recommitted to speaking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in more direct terms. I said to you earlier that silence is the door to consent. And we believe strongly that if we aren't speaking up, then we are allowing things to continue that we don't believe in and that we know are wrong. In addition to wrong, they're just plain ineffective as well. So we've become more clear about our commitments around diversity, equity, and inclusion than we have been in the past. We have always taught it, though. We stay in our lane. Really, we do three things. One, we stay in our lane. So we focus on mindset, leadership, and organizational culture, and how to take what we teach to create environments that are equitable, that are inclusive. And we also have a strong desire to work in social justice. I have an arm of my company that has maintained Gordon's commitment to those incarcerated individuals who don't have access to training materials like this. So that's the first thing. We stay in our lane and we teach that and how that really matters for DEI. The second thing is that I immediately went to my closest colleague, friends from college, and tapped a woman named Beth to contract with me as a senior DEI consultant. She has years of experience in HR. She's an African-American woman. She has a Filipino husband. She has biracial children. So she's seeing the world through so many different lenses. And she is able to, because she was in the market to be consulting on these, I grabbed her right away and said, let's pick up where we left off in college having these conversations. So that's our second thing. We brought someone on who really has some experience in this area and a desire to partner with me and my material specifically. And the third is strategic partnerships. So there are some people in my network. One company is called Potential Unleashed, and I'd love to introduce you to them. They do an outstanding job with DEI work. And so I've partnered with Jamad on a number of projects to make sure that if it's something beyond my depth of knowledge or experience, that I'm getting someone in there that's best for the client.
I would definitely like to meet them and talk to them.
Absolutely.
Now, you said you had developed curricula for prisons. It just seems like a really special area. It sounds like Gordon had an interest in that. Tell me more about that.
Gordon was absolutely dedicated to incarcerated populations and disenfranchised populations. And so some of our social justice and racial justice work, unfortunately, starts in that disenfranchised area of the population. Well, let me start with this. Gordon did 17 years in prison. And when he got out the final time, he was in and out, and those are hilarious stories. Hilarious now, looking back, probably not so funny then. He started to experience the education taught by Lou Tice of the Pacific Institute at about 39 years old. And it was he learned how to change his mindset, and he discovered, I'm never going back to prison. And in addition, there are people inside, just like me, who want to change and don't have a clue how to do it. Don't have a clue that it's my own mind that has trapped me. Circumstances are sometimes outside of our control, but everything in here is within our control. And if I change the way I think, I change the way I act. So for him, it was an awakening that drove him down a very successful path of 40 years, more really, almost 50 years, dedicating himself to getting this information into prisons. In the meantime, he was also working in union management. He was working with high-level leaders. He was working around the world doing what I do now. When I started working with Gordon, this became a passion of mine as well. I am astonished that we are the most incarcerating country in the world. We incarcerate as of June 2020, 2.12 million people in the world. And the next behind us is China, and they 500,000 fewer than we do. So it's astonishing to me that the wealthiest country in the world is putting so many people behind bars when it's so clear that it doesn't work for the purposes that we want it to work. Now, I'm not one of those people who thinks that no one should go to prison. I don't feel that way at all. There are some people, you know, Gordon always says they're not in prison for picking flowers out of someone else's garden. What I am concerned about, though, is that most people don't understand that the majority of inmates get out of prison. That means today's inmate is tomorrow's neighbor. And so I want people to understand that public safety is best served by helping people inside, on the inside. So helping their internal thinking patterns whenever possible, giving them some skills that help them be successful on the outside. Because if you come out without any hope, any skill, any new opportunities to gain employment, you're just going right back in. So you go in with a sprained ankle and come out with a broken leg. And as Gordon coached and mentored me into this work, that's a passion I want to continue. Our ability to serve prisons goes up and down depending on the politics of the day, unfortunately, because prison budgets are almost always tied to politics. Private prisons is another story completely that I have a serious problem with people profiting off of the incarceration of human beings. So that's another discussion, of course. I hope that as we continue forward in our dedication to human beings, that I'm able to keep that part of Gordon's company alive for many years to come.
Do you do anything to make the materials available to people who have just left prison? Because I think that's a population that is also finding difficulties because it's the re-entry back into society and they're not sure where to go with it.
Absolutely. We do have our program in a number of probation and parole opportunities, or community policing is sometimes what they call it, if they don't call it probation. So it has been used in that environment. We also, particularly in New Mexico, they have done a phenomenal job of using our recovery program for people who have been arrested for DUI. And so in that state, there's sometimes alternative sentencing that includes our framework for recovery program. And when people go through that program, they're less likely to reoffend on a DUI. So we've been very successful in those areas of helping people change their mindset and to realize that there's more to their own lives, that they're capable of more than they thought. Honestly, it's the same thing I'm teaching high-level leaders. I don't tell them they're getting the same thing that the prisons are getting. The key is that we all have these limitations in our mind. If we're successful in life, then maybe our learning curve is a smaller slope. But those limitations are still there. And overcoming our own internal limitations, I call them beaches, our beliefs, expectations, attitudes, comfort zones, and habits. I call them beach. If you can overcome the beaches in your mind to be more effective, for someone in prison, that means when they get out, maybe they can get their kids back. Maybe they can land a job and pay child support. For an executive, it means maybe a woman gets a board seat, or maybe a man who didn't think he could advance in the organization from being a line worker to a supervisor. So all these different challenges boil down to really the same internal beaches. How do I create ones that are going to get me where I really want to go? And am I clear about where I want to go? Or am I busy thinking about what I'm not good at, what I don't want, and what is going wrong? So for me, every day is an absolute amazing opportunity to see someone grow, no matter what part of life that is.
You know, you've coached sports, and I'm wondering whether you might have used your business coaching methods with the teams or vice versa.
Yeah. I would love to go back and coach sports again now that I have all of this additional experience. I was very young when I was a coach, and I think I would be better at the off-court types of activities. I was pretty good. I think I would be better. I definitely use techniques with my leadership teams that I use. I joke that they're going to have to run and do push-ups if they don't do their homework, which isn't true. But I do use some similar techniques. I mean, one thing about coaching a basketball team is that we need to be very clear about what is our purpose and what is our goal, and what is your role in achieving that goal, and what do you owe to your teammates, and what's the framework, meaning values, that we're going to operate in order to achieve that goal. So when, you know, in sports, being clear about those things seems to come a little bit easier. When you get with a team of executives, the truth is it's a little harder to get through their already being successful. So they're already in the position, they're already doing the things that they think they're supposed to do. Going to the next level requires being able to reach them in a way that they're not necessarily always ready for. So helping them see that maybe they aren't as clear about their goal as they need to be, or that people aren't clear about their roles, and that's the leader's responsibility to make sure they are clear. That clarity is, I think, easier to achieve in athletics than it is with executives. Athletes, when I coach professional athletes, if I can convince them that what I'm teaching them is going to make them more successful, they will adopt it like that. Because if you can help me hit a baseball more effectively when I'm paid millions of dollars to hit baseballs, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to do what you say, Kat. I'll do it. And when I go to an executive, I don't know if this stuff is going to help. I don't know if this stuff is going to work. So I have to be very skilled at getting them to trust me and to realize that these things will make you more effective. It is going to make you a better leader. And quite frankly, it's going to make your life easier.
So what I hear you saying is that perhaps the business end of it, people aren't quite so innately needy.
I think that's true. They aren't innately needy, and they need to have a little bit more proof of concept before they're really willing to jump in. Even if they've sought me out, they often need proof of concept.
Yeah, that's.
I have a few things that all effective leaders who really stand out do and do well. One of them is that they have one-on-one meetings regularly. And I give them an agenda to follow on those one-on-one meetings. These aren't business meetings. These are ongoing connection and coaching, mentoring meetings. And I had a top-level executive, brilliant person in France, who swore to me, I don't have time for that, Kat. I don't have time for meeting with my people. And I said, okay, promise me this. Try it for 6 months. And if you still believe that it's not one of the best tools available to you, then I'll never bother you about it again. He did it. He came back to me. He said, Kat, it's the best thing I've ever done in my leadership. It's the best. And he went to Harvard. I mean, it's like, he said, it's the most impactful thing I've ever done with my team, and I'll never question you again. So we were able to develop some really neat strategies going forward to make him as effective as possible.
When you think back, who has been the biggest influence in your life? Was it a parent or a boss or a friend or who?
I have been blessed to have some terrific influences in my life, and my family's had a bit of a rough time of it in our lives. So I have to start with my mom. My mom was a teen mom, and my parents were both very young. Mom and dad were very young. My mom, considering that she was that young, to be able to instill in my sister and I the idea that we were going to go to college, we were going to be as successful as we wanted to be, there was just no question that that's what was going to happen. She reinvented her life when my parents divorced, went to work and worked her way up in a hotel to become the general manager of several different hotels and retirement homes, and started on minimum wage, which at the time, this was 70s. So at the time it was $3.75 an hour. So she's amazing. She's an amazing woman. I love her dearly. My father taught me that girls can do anything. So if I wanted ballet, I got ballet. The year I wanted a basketball for Christmas or my birthday, he put up a basketball hoop. It was the most terrible basketball hoop you've ever seen. I didn't get a real backboard. I got repurposed house siding that if you hit it just right, the ball went flying everywhere. He still did it, and he got me a basketball. I wanted a football one year, so he got me a football. He taught me how to throw it by throwing it right at my face so that I would learn to catch. He would take me with him to his softball games. He taught me how to lay brick, taught me how to fish. His mother was a huge influence. So my parents were big in teaching me that there aren't any limitations. I was shocked when I got a little older and suddenly noticed limitations. I had an outstanding high school basketball coach who impacted me in big ways. And in my adult life, I have very good friends, very strong women in my life who are outstanding friends. And Gordon, of course, he affirmed me from the moment he met me that I would be every bit the teacher that he is, that I would be just as effective as he is in impacting leaders, that I could change the prison system, or that I could impact the prison system, that I could impact racial justice in this world. He affirmed all of these things in me, and I'm forever grateful because he put me on a path of a career that I wouldn't change for anything. And I thought I was destined to be a basketball coach. I wouldn't change this career for anything. So I've been really blessed with some amazing people. I've probably left some out, but they've just been amazing.
So is that what drives you, do you think, in your personal leadership journey, or is there something else?
What drives me in my personal leadership journey is that I know that if I don't continue to grow, I can't help others be the best they can be. Because each time I advance in the career work, each time I get to coach someone at an even higher level, or each time I'm asked to facilitate meetings for a global leadership team that's running an $8 billion company or a $10 billion company, I know I need to be better. So I'm driven in my own leadership journey by, if they're smart enough, if I'm good enough. That's something Lou Tice used to say all the time. And if I'm going to bring the best out in them, I better be challenging myself. I better be working on the mental junk that I might still have from growing up, or work on my self-confidence, or expand my knowledge so that I know what I'm talking about when I'm assisting. So I think what drives me is that I want to be a maker of champions. And if I'm going to do that, I better grow.
What do you most love about your life?
Oh my gosh. I love my work. I love my connection I love the connections that I make with people. I love my family. I love my significant other. I have an opportunity to go to so many amazing places in the world. I've taken my mom on those trips. I've taken my sister on those trips. Both of my sisters have children that I just adore like my own. So the people in my life, I love. And this has been an excellent year to remind me that I'm not doing enough connecting with them when I'm flying 300,000 miles a year. So it's been a great year for reconnecting with what I love most. And the second thing I love most is anytime I can be outside and near the water. So I live on a lake. I have a boat on a lake. I vacation in Maui whenever I possibly can, as you and I share a love for Maui. Anytime I can be on the beach or next to a river, fishing in a river, or on a boat, water skiing, or anytime I can be by the water, I feel like I'm at my best.
Let me ask you a question about today, and that is with everything that we're facing, you could say COVID, you could say the economy, you could say race relations, you could say climate change.
Yeah.
Have you changed your outlook on what is most important today?
I love that question. My initial response was going to be yes. It's not really true though. I have not changed my outlook. What I have changed is my commitment to my outlook. My outlook is always the same. I'm committed to my work. I'm committed to my family. I'm committed to issues of social justice. I'm committed to my friends, and I'm committed to my own health and well-being. And yet, I was not demonstrating those commitments with my behavior as often as I could have. And so during 2020, for me, I was blessed to have some years of strong work leading up to 2020, where we've taken a big hit in 2020, a big, very big. However, I'm blessed that we had money put aside to absorb that hit. What I didn't realize was how much of a hit I had taken on my personal health as well. So 2020 has been incredibly valuable for me to reconnect with friends that I hadn't talked to in a long time. Even though it's distance, to be there for my family. So I've dedicated myself to staying as sequestered as possible so that I could be there for my mom, who she has a lung issue and needs to be sure that she doesn't come in contact with COVID. The year has made me recommit to my dedication to social justice issues. I lost 40 pounds this year, so I recommitted myself to my health, which is good. All that traveling and eating in restaurants, and it wasn't doing very, very good. So my outlook hasn't changed, but my commitment to maintaining that outlook has. And for me, that's been the top thing that's come out of the previous tough months that we've had.
You know, I worry a little bit about the 20-somethings, the people that are in their teens and 20s, when they're viewing all these things that are happening and their restrictions on school and where do we go to college and all these things that they're dealing with. What advice do you have for the 20-somethings today?
So my niece is a 20-something, and two of my nieces actually. Another niece is a nurse, becoming a nurse, and so quite a powerful time to become a nurse. And my niece Bailey is in college. I think my advice to them would be the same advice I would give in wonderful circumstances. I would say dream bigger. I think when we're 20, we tend to look at what's the next step in life. And so I want them to dream bigger. Like, you know, you might as well throw it way out there and see what can happen. And then in order to dream bigger, you got to get any self-esteem issues you have handled as soon as possible. So if I could go back to being 20, I think there are some internal tapes that we play in our lives that run with us throughout life. I would try to handle those a lot earlier in life. So, you know, throw yourself out there, dream bigger, get any lingering negative tapes handled as soon as you can. Fail fast and fail forward. Make mistakes, go out there and figure it out. Travel and experience as much as you can. Learning other viewpoints in the world changes your worldview, and it changes you, and it makes life far more rich, engaging, and vibrant. And I would say get as many mentors as possible. It's easy when you're 20 to think that you are clear about your values in life and what's right and what's wrong. And I think it's important to reach out to as many mentors as possible to ask questions about how they see the world. People who've been there and who can help you go on your next steps. Those are some key ideas I think that I would give a 20-year-old. I'm not sure I wouldn't give it to a 30 or 40-year-old.
Oh, well, Kat, it's been so much fun talking to you. You know, the thing that I particularly like about you is that you seem to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And that is so important in our world today, to be honest, to be clear, to try to help other people. And it seems like that's what you're doing. And I really appreciate that. Do you have anything else you'd like to say to anyone?
First of all, that's the highest praise I think anyone can be given. And I would encourage people to realize that internally, we are capable of so much more than we think. And no matter how successful you've been, or no matter how much you've screwed your life up, it's never too late. So everything we are about, we like to use a saying that's, any person in this room can cut open an apple and count the seeds in an apple, but no one can count the apples in a seed. And what we're trying to do is plant seeds of your own greatness and see what grows. That's what we're about. So I hope that this conversation helps people think that way. And I just encourage everyone to go on that journey of exploration of what else could I be, and how can I get more joy out of life.
Kat, before we leave, I would like you to do one thing, if you would.
Yes.
And that is give the name of your company again and your website so people know how to reach you.
Absolutely. The company name is Instar Performance, and we're found at www.instarperformance.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Catherine Crosslin, Catherine with a C. You can find us on Twitter, Instar Perf, and on Instagram, instar.performance. So we're out there. Instar spelled I-N-S-T-A-R. And thank you, Nan, so much for having me.
Well, we will put all those things on our website on your guest page, but I think it's good to say it as well. Thank you so much, Kat.
My pleasure.